it lust? Is it love? I don't know. I'm 12.
Yeah. Because you probably would have like, oh, I wish I had maybe dated a couple other people in high school. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, like, would they have wanted to date me is the real question.
Welcome. You're listening to Nuditea, a podcast where we get naked with our feelings while drinking tea. I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Wendy, and on this podcast we talk about food, travel, adult things, feelings. Sometimes we have special guests. Still no, because, you know, the current situation with the world. Today, we are going to be talking about some household restrictions that we experienced while growing up, because I think we both had fairly conservative and strict parents and upbringings. So we just want to like dip into that and see how we felt about it then, how we feel about it now. Would we want to impose the same kind of restrictions if we so choose to have children? That kind of thing.
And I think originally you thought there might be like a little more differences, maybe because of just cultural backgrounds. Mm-hmm. No, not really.
We looked at the list. It's basically the same list. So we're going to talk about it.
It really comes down to conservative parents.
Yes, it really does.
That's what it is.
So teas first. Yes. What are you drinking?
I forget. What am I drinking?
You're drinking the Japanese genmaicha.
Oh, yes. I've had it before. It's very good. I love me some roasted rice.
Mm-hmm. And I am drinking David's tea, sunset matcha, which is like the matcha that also has powdered beet in it. So it's a very strange color. It's like murky purple. And it tastes kind of like murky purple. It kind of tastes like murky purple. It's not the best.
Favorite flavor.
Yeah, but I have to get rid of it. It's been there for so long. It is a really nice day though. Can we wait until the sun goes down before we try to go out to Walmart? Because I'm not about to get tan out here.
Yeah, 100%.
Kim's like, I don't want to
I haven't exposed myself to direct sunlight in so long. I'm pretty sure just at like a minute of sunlight, I will just burn up.
Burst into flames.
So the first main one was no alcohol. Mm-hmm. Was that the same for you? You had a no alcohol?
I think our no alcohol policy was way less stringent than yours. Because my parents drink. Mm-hmm. They like will have some wine with dinner sometimes. My dad enjoys a good screwdriver once in a while. We've recently gotten the household a little bit more into beer, but that's like recent, so it does not apply. But your family is like...
My parents don't drink. I think their parents didn't drink. It very much is something they grew up in. It's also heavily tied to... They feel like drinking leads to very bad decisions and decisions that are sinful. I think they were just worried about what kind of mischief we'd end up getting in if we drank. Mm-hmm. So it's just in their household, there's no drinking, while all of us, except for one, drink fairly regularly now.
Yeah. So for me, my parents were always about that, like, obviously no underage drinking, mm-hmm. but with your family, even if you go home now in your parents' house, there's still no drinking allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys have been pretty respectful about that.
Yeah, for the most part, I think.
For the most part, yeah. Yeah, my household, I think when I was younger, my parents didn't drink a lot. Anyway, it wasn't a rule or anything. They just never found it to be a thing in our house. Mm-hmm. But now we always have like a stock of wine. We always have some beer around. And I think that also changed once I became legal drinking age in the US, which is 21.
Oh.
Yeah. So before that, they would still have like gifts from people. We would have wine bottles and stuff, but very little were things that we purchased or were things that my parents purchased themselves. It was always just like if company came over, people bring wine and different things. So we're just not big into drinking, and my parents always had this mentality that it's like a very steep cliff from like, you know, just casual drinker into straight up alcoholism.
Legit. That is one of the fears, I think, is they were grappling with, like, because my parents, I think my mom has had like wine one time in her life. She didn't like how it felt. So she never did it again. And it was actually like she was in a very safe place when she took it. It was offered by like a family friend's mm-hmm. parents that she was eating with, and she felt the effects of being buzzed, essentially. And when she was describing it, I'm like, yeah, that's what it does feel like. So
Mom got tipsy.
She didn't like that. And she also, I think, it is the fear that, you start drinking, there is no in between. It's either you don't drink or you drink and you're like basically an alcoholic.
Yeah, and my parents have a looser version of that where it's like drinking once in a while is fine, but even now, they know I don't drink very often, but every time that Xiangbin and I FaceTime them and we're like, oh, we just decide to have a beer today or something, they'd be like, oh, you need to watch out, like, don't drink too much, like, I feel like you're always drinking something, it's always an occasion. I'm like, guys, I drink like maybe once every 3 months, if that.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be worried about. So I think our parents' worries are mostly that we'll get into some sort of trouble. Mm-hmm. And we're very safe when we drink. We're not usually typically binge drinkers at all.
I do have like a monthly binge
Nick Cage movie night.
Yeah, Nick Cage movie night. So,
but it's all very safe environments
yes.
with very safe people, like our close friends. I've never put myself in a situation where it's like I'm drinking around people and it's just like all strangers that I don't know very well and it's a bad situation. Never. Like we're just not that dumb.
No, I don't really think. Maybe because when was the first drink you ever had?
Oh, I don't know. Probably that year I went back to China in elementary school and wine was just like offered to literally everyone at the table, even the kids. The kids would have like wine mixed with some Sprite. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. Like pretty sure the legal drinking age in China is 18, but there was just no one checking up on us at all, and it was just bottles of wine on the table. I'm pretty sure that was probably one of the first times, and it was not enough to like get me tipsy.
And again, they're probably not like watching you as hardcore as they normally would because you're surrounded by family. It's a celebratory thing, so maybe they we're like, we'll just leave some alcohol out. Maybe they'll
turn a blind eye.
And most kids don't like the taste of alcohol.
Yeah, and we drank it because it tasted like Sprite.
Yeah,
because it was mixed with a lot of Sprite.
Yeah, exactly. So anytime anyone just wine and beer when they're younger, it's like, ooh, why do we drink this? It's when you get like the coolers as kids because you're just straight up drinking juice. Yeah, essentially. So, because mine was grade 8. Somewhere grade 8, I think, is when I first drank, and my parents don't know that. My mom will probably listen to this.
Linda,
like,
if you're listening.
But it was never one of those things that I think when you grow up with those kind of restrictions, either you really lean into being like the rebellious kind of person who takes drinking maybe too far, or you just I don't drink irresponsibly and that heavily. It's probably like once, twice a week, maybe. Not even right now because I ain't getting drunk in quarantine that often. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think even though we had this, like, very strict no alcohol in the house, they didn't want us drinking, all that stuff, we all kind of drank relatively responsibly. I think there's, of course, times where you aren't keeping up with your pacing of your drinks, and then you're like, oh, that kind of hit me a little bit faster. But I never, at one point, I think, felt unsafe with the level of drunkenness I did. There might have been a time in, like, undergrad where I definitely got very drunk. But again, I was surrounded by friends and people for most of them I knew and I could trust. So I think that's
and
what
friends
it comes
are
down
always,
to.
like, good for looking out. Like,
good friends. Some friends ditch. Some friends are not for looking out. But I have had very good friends.
They're really good friends. Even if they're drunk, we'll all kind of keep tabs on each other to make sure no one's making a fool of themselves or like getting into any sketchy situations. I think it just depends on the environment that you grew up in and knowing your own limits. Because when I first started drinking, I leaned in heavily into that, like, ooh, I never got to do this before, and now I'm free. That was probably closer to undergrad when I moved out of my parents' house, when I was able to be more experienced in, like, the partying and the drinking. But very quickly, I figured out that I do not have the tolerance for that stuff. I cannot handle my booze. So then it's just like, oh, you recognize that, and I don't want to be putting myself in an unsafe situation, so then you scale the heck back because you just learn as you go along. So it's still really funny to me every time my parents freak out over the phone and they're like, oh, you're drinking again, like you need to really control, like just be careful. I'm just like, guys, it's fine.
I think there could be like understandable worry if you had like relatives or family members who have kind of been alcoholics, because there is the genes that kind of get passed on.
But we don't.
Technically, I have no idea if my family has those genes because they don't drink.
They just don't drink.
Would you have the same restrictions, or what would you do differently?
I mean, I think obeying the law in terms of underage drinking is a good way to go. But Xiaomin and I, we like to get down with a beer when we're watching a football game or a movie. I like my hot tot. You like your hot toddies. I like my hot toddies. Like, I don't think there's any space for that kind of intolerance in our lives. We just kind of do what we want, and we're going to be safe about it. So it's not a big deal.
But I mean, like, raising kids.
Yeah.
Because for me, I don't necessarily think the straight up no alcohol restriction is necessarily the best. I think you need to not look at alcohol and demonize it and make it something that people would then feel like, ooh, this is something I can't have. I want it more now. And I think exposing your children, obviously in a safe way, if you're just like, oh, hey, have a couple sips of dad's beer.
And like seeing your parents drink responsibly also would affect kids a lot, because then they're like, oh, this is how normal adults drink. Like, maybe I'll have some fun sometimes in my youth and like get drunk, but I'm going to like be able to phase out and figure out a good pace that is for my lifestyle.
I think that's like a time to learn, and then a time to educate your child about how to do it safely, while sometimes it can, get away from you, but so that when university comes and this amazing independence that kids have never felt before, and they just go crazy. And I never did. I don't know. I guess I didn't really drink all that much in high school. But I never was like independence. I needed it all. In
high school. I think I went through a phase in high school where I wanted my parents to really trust me. So even if I went to parties and my friends were drinking, I remember there was one night when all my friends got super drunk in the basement of one of the parents' houses on white rum. It was like deadly stuff for high schoolers.
Oh, for sure.
And I was just like, nope. You guys are all hot messes, and someone needs to be here to be able to call 911 if we need to. So I was at the point where I was like texting my parents every half hour to be like, I'm not having sex, I'm not doing drugs, we're all good, we're not drinking. I mean, like, I wasn't drinking, so it was kosher still. So I had that weird phase where I was like rebelling against it, but also I was like, see, I'm responsible. Like, I can handle my own stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like,
gonna prove them wrong.
Exactly. Which I guess I kind of, like, it worked out for everyone. I didn't get into any serious trouble, and I'm a very well-regulated drinker now. Mostly because I can't drink that much.
And I think as a female, I really hate waking up and not remembering the majority of the night. While I've never actually been scared that anything terrible has happened because of the people I've surrounded myself with, I still hate not remembering. Yeah, so I just think on like a safety level, and as someone who likes to feel comfortable with everything that they did, I've hated waking up. It's not even just the hangover, whatever. I deal with hangovers all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time. I don't... Not all the time. But
my parents are gonna watch this and be like, Wendy, like, are you sure you should be hanging out with Kim? She seems like an alcoholic.
She's such a bad influence. But
she's not, guys.
There's not. Yeah, there's just nothing worse than, because I think different with guys. They wake up from being like blacking out and they're like, last night must have been just the best. I don't think they ever think, oh, did I do something wrong? But yeah.
So the next one on your list
is no dances, except for prom. So the funny thing about that is my brother-in-law jokes. He's like, I like that your parents didn't want you going to any of the dances except for prom, where all the bad shit happens, basically. Our parents, I think, again, they grew up where it's like their households didn't really dance, and it's the idea of like sinful things happen at dances, or dancing leads to touching, and then what happens? It's a lot of that, and maybe they couldn't trust who was chaperoning, and they just wanted to make sure we were safe. But it is funny that why expose them to the more innocent ones when you could just jump right to prom, where everyone's just going wild. I say that, it's not like my prom was super wild, but there is like after parties and stuff like that, which do not happen at elementary school dances or even high school dances, really. So it's just interesting that my parents, again, it's very much like, oh, sinful things could happen, and they didn't grow up going to dances, and they just wanted to kind of regulate and kind of track that.
I don't think my parents ever had an issue, because even from the last episode, we talked a little bit about school dances. They never restricted me from going to any school dances. I think probably even in elementary school, my school did have some dances. It didn't happen very often. I know we definitely had one after graduation, but all through high school, I was allowed to go to them. I think their mentality was just like, it's literally all of the teachers and parents there in the school gym. What could happen?
Yeah.
And like, still things could happen, but I think in general, if it was associated with school and they knew that other parents and teachers were going to be there, especially the teachers, they were okay with it. So I didn't get any of that.
I'm also wondering, like, we didn't live super close to the elementary school that we went to, so maybe mom and dad just didn't want to have to drive us out there and then figure out, like, what to do, because there was nothing out there really to do, and then drive home. So maybe it was a little bit of that. Honestly, looking back at it, it's like, I don't care that I didn't go to any dances except for prom, because dances are real lame, except for I think it's just also a very good learning curve for children, dealing with your feelings towards other people and like how to deal with in those situations. I think it's just social situations that you should expose your child to, again, and it's a safe, like, there's parents there, there's teachers there, it's a very safe environment to kind of do. I think it's how you bond with friends and how you deal and you gossip about the crushes that you have. I think
it's a fun
thing.
time, okay? Because the majority of the dances that I went to, at least the earlier ones, it would just be like me and my small group of friends. We just stand in a circle and dance together, and that was basically all that happened. Later in high school, the dances became more about like, ooh, we get to dance with guys now.
Ooh, did you smuggle in a Mickey of whatever?
No, that never, to my knowledge, that never happened at any of our school dances. But it was just like an interesting stage in your high school life, and also right when you're hitting puberty and all of these hormones are, rushing through your body.
And that is what my parents feared, I'm sure.
But like, it's a school dance. You go to the dance. The worst that could happen is you grind up on some people and leave no room for Jesus, and then you separate and Jesus can come back. It wasn't that big of a deal. And I think teachers were also very good about like maintaining a level of propriety on the dance floor. Like, there was no like heavy making out and like groping. It was just grinding was the most that happened. So it was fine.
I think it was also probably their fear of like what would happen after. But if they're to pick you up,
just come pick me up after. Where am I gonna go? I'm not gonna run away.
Yeah. I actually kind of want to ask my mother, is it some of it was just having to drive us back and forth? Because it's like
because there were a
15,
lot of you
20 minutes,
just back and forth all the time.
Exactly. So it's mainly the dancing, leave room for Jesus kind of thing. And
to segue into that, dating is on your list.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say dating, getting tattoos, and getting anything pierced all had to happen after I was 18.
Even ears.
Wow.
Okay.
They just picked this age and they were like, you can't do these things until. Yeah, the tattoo thing, sure. The piercing thing, less, because, if you really didn't like the piercings, they could grow back. Tattoos is a little more permanent.
A little more permanent.
A little bit. So, yeah, you know what? Have them become 18 and maybe make a well-educated choice in the matter. I was never like, man, I never got a tattoo. Honestly, if I was going to get piercings, they would have had to give them to me young, because once I hit high school, I couldn't get piercings because of all the sports I did. Because you have to have studs in for 6 months?
Is it? I thought it was like 6 weeks.
Oh, I think I don't know.
I can't remember. I got my ears pierced in undergrad, and I have no memories of that period of time.
I thought it was 6 months. Maybe it is 6 weeks. But even with 6 weeks, I didn't have enough downtime between sports, and you're supposed to either take out you're supposed to take out your piercings.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would just tape them up, but
Yeah,
at some
I
point they said
remember.
you couldn't do that either.
Mm.
So and the same with like getting your belly button pierced. I've never wanted my belly button pierced, honestly.
No, that just seemed inconvenient,
Exactly.
honestly. I always had this fear, because there were some girls I remember in elementary school that got their belly buttons pierced, and it looked really cute. It was like, that early 2000s aesthetic, but then I would always like imagine, what if a button or something caught on their ring
Your wool
as like
sweater,
their...
just...
Ooh, so I always like felt really queasy about that kind of thing. I've always wanted my ears pierced, but my parents also didn't allow that when I was living in their house. And then it was not until I think maybe the second or third year of undergrad, that I went with two of my other friends. We went to Claire's and I got my
Good
ears
old
pierced.
Claire's.
Good old Claire's. Buy a pair of earrings, get your ears pierced for free.
The thing about Claire's is
Oh.
I love that any ear piercing like accessory store has the like piercing station right out in front for the whole world to see. That is terrible.
Yeah, I remember. It was right against, like, the entire front is glass, and I was sitting back to the front. So
I don't know if it's just like advertising, like, hey, we do ear piercings, or is it
look,
just
people
like,
actually do this. It's
that
fine.
girl teared up. It hurts.
Well, my face was facing into the store and not like facing out to the rest of the mall. So that part was okay.
And maybe it's a health and safety thing where it's like very transparent what is happening.
Don't be pulling some shady shit, Claire's.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Which again, these things, like, I understand, like the ear piercing or piercing in general and the tattoo. Like, yeah, I don't care that they gave me the 18 age limit. I have no tattoos and I have no piercings because I just at some point didn't care.
have both.
I'm
But
like,
I obtained them all during and after undergrad.
yeah. But the dating thing, which if they weren't letting me go to dances and no alcohol, it's not a surprise that the whole dating restriction was there. 18's a little high, in my opinion. But I think they just wanted to avoid the whole high school dating, which I think there's pros and cons to it. I think 14 to 17-year-olds, very emotional. Love just hits them so hard and also breaks their little heart. But I think it's also another, like, growing up, figuring out how to date, what's your type. It is important, and I think it's funny that all your children are kind of shit at dating.
Are you saying that for, like,
no, that's not even true.
your
But
siblings?
like, there's like points where it's like, oh, so no dating, but then once you get to 20, you're constantly being asked,
Do you have a boyfriend?
do you have a boyfriend? Oh, are you seeing anyone? Are you getting married soon? Are you a spinster yet? Like, when do we identify that? But I'm like, I'm probably not great at dating because I didn't like have a very safe environment where everyone's kind of figuring out dating and love and all that stuff. So I'm like fine at it.
Yeah.
But I think there's things where I don't necessarily lean in and take chances because I'm like,
Don't want to mess with that.
don't want to mess with that. So I think
so much time commitment.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, Mother, the fact that you only have 2 grandchildren could indicate that the 18 no dating rule was maybe a little too high. But I get it's like a safety thing and they want to make sure of all the things. But I think there's a way where you let someone date and figure that out and be safe as long as you're talking with your children and educating them and making sure their emotions and feelings are being heard in that said relationship. So.
And that kind of also ties into sex talk with parents a little bit, where I think my parents, the 2 main concerns they had in terms of earlier dating, so pre-undergrad, was a serious like lack of sexual education, which means that I didn't know what was going on really, even though the school kind of provided some, but it was like terrible, obviously. And they never really talked to me much about it because they themselves did not receive very open education, or not even up-to-date education. I don't think they received like any education. No. They didn't, from my talk with my mom. And so they didn't want me to like get pregnant. They also are...
That's like the main fear. That is totally the main fear of why they had that age restriction of 18. But I was like, Mom, when did you and dad meet each other? I mean, and they also met at a youth group. So I don't remember what age it was. It could have been younger, but I'm just like 18 and you know what? We're good children. A lot of us followed that. And I say that we were all shit at dating. We're not all shit at dating. I have siblings that are just fine at dating, and I'm also okay at it. But it's just this idea of that,
like, early exposure could mean that you have a longer period of, like, risk involved with your kids and their behaviors, because it is, like, just a very turbulent time in their life. But also that means that they're learning and they're gaining a lot of new experiences that could be beneficial to them, figuring out the types of partners that are healthy or unhealthy for them, the type of sexual relationships that they are into and not into. Maybe they're
type
just
of contraception they want to be using or should be using. I like that it kind of goes along with the whole no dances until prom thing. It's like my parents, no dating until you're in undergrad, which you can't surveillance us in any way once we're in undergrad. So
it's just like, oh, you're not my responsibility anymore. If you get pregnant, you get pregnant. If you get hurt, you get hurt.
But that's not even their thinking either.
That's not what they're thinking, but that's essentially what they're doing with that kind of rule, right?
Yeah.
So the second thing my parents were worried about, other than, like, having sex and getting pregnant, was that my studies might suffer. So, like, my grades might drop, and then that affects directly what kind of schools for undergrad I would be able to get into. So, I mean, that was a legitimate concern, but I was doing fine. And it wasn't like I would be going out for dates all of the time. Yeah. I didn't have a cell phone.
Got the money for that, honestly.
Yeah. We were in high school. And back then, technology was not so, incredible that we could be, like, FaceTiming and video chatting and, like, texting all the time. Because
my parents didn't have to even deal with, like, Snapchat nude photos or sexting. They didn't have to deal with any of that.
No. So our parents were already playing it so super safe with regard to the time that we grew up in. It was strange. My parents did know about one guy that I started dating in high school. I think it was in my last year of high school, but we only dated for, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks. And I didn't know how to date people, and I was awkward as hell. Like, I had this weird thing where it's like, if I liked a guy, for some reason, I did not know how to talk to them. It would just be, like, awkward silence the entire time I was with them. So obviously that, like, wasn't gonna work out, so it just, like, ended. We broke up over text eventually. But I mean, it was, like, high school.
Yeah, and it was only 2 to 3 weeks, so it's like, do you need anything more than a text?
I was not severely traumatized by this experience. It was fine. But it was just a very funny experience for me, because I had no previous experience dealing with crushes or guys that I liked. So it's like, what do? I literally don't know. So I did nothing. Yeah.
It was a really easy rule to kind of hide behind.
Yeah.
Because it's a very safe thing where it's like, oh, it's not really my choice to say, like, I'm only rejecting you because of this rule. If I could date, I'd probably date. Or even if I did have feelings for the other person, I was all like, but I'm not really supposed to. I follow too many fucking rules. That is what I've learned about.
I can't believe you actually, like, if you like someone, that you still stuck to it.
But that's also just, like, nerves and not really knowing how to go about it. But if I didn't have necessarily these, like, dating restrictions, what would I have had to fall back on? I would have either had to be just honest and be like, I don't want to actually date you, or you would stumble into something.
Yeah, and also, like, questions might come up on, like, who are you talking to or where you're going, if you're going out on dates. It's just, like, this whole thing. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think as a parent, I would want a way more open, like, conversation with my kid. I don't think it was a good system for me to, like, date people in secret. Because then it's just, like, I'm always fearful of being found out.
I'm dating in secret, and you're like, Kim, I don't know if you're safe.
Why?
I know.
So, I don't know. I think open communication and establishing, like, a positive chain of conversations rather than parents just being like, no, you can't date. No, why are you dating? Why are you going out all the time? Like, that makes kids really closed off to want to tell their parents about things or their feelings. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't know. Maybe when I'll have kids, I'll be like, heck no, are you going out with this guy? I disapprove. Like, who knows?
Maybe.
I'm not a parent yet, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But as of right now, I think I would want my kids to be able to feel comfortable coming to me with questions surrounding dating and like crushes and like how to handle yourself in these situations and all of that.
Would you have age restriction? Do you think like 15, 14?
Maybe 14, 15 actually. Because like that's
high
when
school,
that's
grade
when
9.
like the puberty really hits, and that's when you start to have crushes and have feelings for whatever gender you're into. So I think I would want them to be able to explore that and be open with me about it. So I think me setting an age limit already cuts them off from being like, Mom, I think I'm kind of into this like guy or girl or person. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Why are my balls dropping? You know, like I just want them to be comfortable coming to me for these things or coming to their dad. I don't know. Pick one.
Pick one.
Yeah.
I also like that there's a point where it's like, oh, they're like kindergarten or first grade, like, this is my first boyfriend. It ain't real, but like parents just swoon over that. But
Yeah,
there's
it's
just
like,
puberty hits. They're like, don't you dare
No.
look at the opposite sex. Don't you go near 5 feet, 6 feet. They were practicing quarantine
physical
COVID
distancing this whole time.
this whole time.
And even in undergrad, I didn't know what to do. Like, I dated that one guy for 3 weeks. That was the only person I dated in high school, like, actually dated as a boyfriend. And then I got to university, and I was just like, I still don't know what to do. And literally everybody else does. Well, like, that's an exaggeration.
Of
like,
course.
a lot
Everyone
of
always
people
thinks
did.
that everyone else has
Knows
done more and knows everything. But that's not true. But it's even more true when you're in high school. And so I think it's important that that's like, because you probably would have like, oh, I wish I had maybe dated a couple other people in high school. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, like, would they have wanted to date me is the real question. What were these feelings reciprocated? I'm not sure. But I think it would have been a good experience just to get a sense of, like, what it's like to be comfortable with someone that you like and be able to have a conversation with them without, like, just sweating out of your butthole. You know? That's all I wanted. I just want to know how to talk to guys. I had very low standards.
And honestly, I think there's a lot of, like, I didn't really, from a very young age, I was, like, hanging out and conversing with guys. So it's not like I needed dating to, like, learn how to do that. But there is, like, this level of, it's another thing to talk to a friend that's a guy, but then to talk to someone that you actively know, like, I like this person, I want to kiss this person.
Yeah, it's very different.
It's very different. So even though I look back on my high school, I'm like, I don't actually really care that I didn't end up dating anyone, but there are, like, probably, like, 3 to 4 people. I was like, if I could go back, I would probably, like, maybe take a chance on 1 or 2 of those people. But again, I followed those rules. Mother, while I didn't follow your no alcohol ever rule, I followed a lot of your rules. And I think a lot of her kids followed a lot of her rules.
Yeah, I followed like most of my parents' rules as well. But dating, I was like, you know what? This is how I'm feeling, and I'm just gonna go for it. I'm not gonna be unsafe about it. Like, I turned out fine. Yeah. It's fine.
I wouldn't have had any fucking clue on how to do it. Had it happened.
But that's the point. You have to jump right in, and you have to learn.
Did you want to talk about your no sleepovers?
Oh, yeah, this was probably way earlier on, mostly in elementary school. Actually, no. It happened in elementary school and through high school, where I was not allowed to go over for sleepovers at any of my friends' houses, save the one friend that I had in elementary school. And that was because my parents knew her parents, like, super, super well, and they had been over to their house, and her parents had come over to my house before, and it was just like, my parents just really didn't like me going over to parties even, or sleepovers at other kids' houses if they didn't know all of the other kids who are going to be there and the parents who are going to be involved. Because I think there's always just, like, that fear of someone being a sexual predator, which I mean, fair,
yeah.
But also, like, maybe that means they should have taken more initiative to get to know the parents of my friends more, so that I could attend these social gatherings, which were like the platform for these experiences and social experiences that are crucial in your development.
My mom let sleepovers happen for a while. I think my birthdays usually consisted of like going bowling. February birthdays. What do you do in February? You go bowling or you toboggan. That's maybe skate. I think I had like co-ed sleepovers until grade 6.
Co-ed?
Yeah.
I never had a... Okay, to be clear, I wasn't allowed to go to other people's houses for sleepovers, but my friends were always welcome to come to my house for sleepovers. I never had any co-ed sleepovers, ever.
I think any sleepovers that weren't happening at my house were usually one-gendered.
But your parents were somehow okay with...
Well, they probably, for some reason, that's where they, like, let all the trust happen, was these sleepovers. But up until grade 6, what, you're, like, 12?
Yeah.
Which... dicey time, honestly. But I don't know,
God
I guess...
forbid one of those people developed early and, bad influence on everyone else at the sleepover.
I don't know, it was an interesting thing. Like, I was never worried that anything would happen, and I guess, like, the parents who came, maybe because they also, like, that household, they don't date, they don't drink,
they don't dance.
Their parents are Christian and conservative. Ain't nothing gonna happen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even like, we slept like down in the basement. My parents slept upstairs. So I think it's interesting, and again, never worried about any of it. It's always funny though, at some point though, Mom's like, we can't probably really do that anymore. Because I think
time to cut that off.
If she said like, oh yeah, so my daughter had her birthday and she had some of her friends over, and it'd be mentioned that like guy friends, and I think parents were very like,
excuse
co-ed? And I actually mainly hung out with guys when I was younger.
That makes it tough.
But I also had like girlfriends who stayed as well. But yeah, until grade 6, I heavily like hung out with guys because sports. A regular old tomboy here. So I think my mom thinks back, she's like, yeah, I guess something like could have happened, or I have to ask her about it. But it's just funny
that's really funny.
I don't know at what point do you decide like, oh, we can't have co-ed
maybe
sleepovers.
like 12, 13 is her cutoff, because like that's when things start to go down.
True. But yeah, even like I'm sure most parents growing up, it's usually just if you're having sleepovers, it is same-sex sleepovers. But at the same time, that's also because girls tend to have friends that are girls, and guys tend to have friends that are guys. And that just kind of happens. Yeah. But when you have the tomboy, and you're like, I want them to sleep over.
What do? Your friends are guys.
Exactly. Probably not have a sleepover, but I'm not sure. I loved that I was able to have sleepovers, and it never became a thing where I felt weird about it. I definitely in grade 6 had a crush on a guy who came to like one of my friends who was sleeping over, but like nothing happened.
But that's the point, Linda. At what age do you start having crushes on people instead of being like, you're just like another person? Like, what age does that happen? And I'm pretty sure it happens before you're 12 and 13.
Oh, it does. It totally does.
So...
Oh, yeah. Because I think even, like, my mom has these books documenting, like, oh, in first grade, this and this happened. And I think it even says, like, crushes. So I think I told her, I'm like, yeah, I have a crush on this guy.
And she was like, invite him over for a sleepover. Let's see what happens.
She didn't know I had a crush on that guy, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Because you stop telling your mom at some point the crushes you have, I guess.
It's true.
Because you're also trying to figure out, like, what is this? What is this feeling that I have for this? Because for someone
Is it lust? Is it love? I don't know. I'm 12.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what lust is at 12. But it is this idea of I'm usually friends with guys, and it's like, what is this extra feeling I have? So, yeah, I think it's just interesting that while I have so many, like, other restrictions growing up, it's like the co-ed sleepovers were, like, up until I was in grade 6. I kind of love that.
No, but. Yeah, that was not a thing for me. My parents were super okay with other people coming over, though. That was nice. Okay, next.
No homework on Sundays. That just ties in with Christianity. And,
can't relate.
And the Sunday being the day off for the Lord's Day.
Extra homework for me on Sundays.
You know what? Looking back, like, I hated that we couldn't do homework on Sundays, and honestly, my parents always napped on Sundays. So there's a time where it's all like, well, after lunch, we're gonna try to do, like, our homework discreetly if we didn't finish it. But I think it's also kind of nice that we had that restriction because it forced me to actually do my homework Friday, Saturday, and then I had like Sunday to just do whatever. And this rule did change once high school happened because
you just have
looking back
homework.
on it, I'm like, I guess there wasn't even that much homework when you compare it to
okay.
undergrad. But it's more than elementary school, so my parents were like, no, you guys can do homework on Sundays. But it did just force me to like do my homework early, which I don't think was a bad thing. But there's also a lot of other things we're not allowed to do on Sunday because it's the Lord's Day, and that's like really do anything. You better just relax, and my mom tries to avoid using the oven any
On
extra like
Sundays?
cooking, so it's a lot of fruit salads and tomato sandwiches, which it was kind of a nice Sunday tradition.
Sorry, I'm just getting a flashback to your mom's tomato sandwiches.
So
Damn,
with
those
those
are so
fresh from the garden
good.
tomatoes. But my dad, did he do farm work on Sundays? You would think he'd have to because cows need to be milked, but maybe he didn't do any on that either. I don't think he did any of that.
Oh, interesting.
But
maybe
I could
he
be
like
remembering
just
wrong.
did the bare minimum and just like left
Like
it
fed
there.
them and stuff like
because they
that.
obviously need to be fed and milked. So
I don't fully remember. Didn't have the rock pick on Sundays. I didn't have to do
Nice.
like a bunch of other things. It was really just a relaxed day. When I was a kid, I was relaxing a lot of the time. So it's not like I needed that one day. But it also felt like we couldn't go out anywhere because going out would be like spending money and making other people work. It's that idea that, well, yes, other places are open, but we're not going to actively
make other people work on the Lord's Day.
On the Lord's Day. So it was very much like go to church. The only people who make work are a pastor. So you go to church, come back, lunch, they go take a nap, we do whatever, and then that's like the Sunday. Maybe have a movie night. It was like quite a lovely time, honestly, Sundays were. But I do remember hating, it's like, man, I didn't get that homework done. So you just have to like do it discreetly because we definitely get in trouble if we were doing homework.
But then you get in trouble if you couldn't finish your homework.
They'd be like, you should have done it on Friday and Saturday.
Well,
So
damn, I
thanks
didn't
for
have
you.
enough time.
No, but then they're like, you had time. Like, they know what you do during the day.
That's true.
So it's not like...
That is true.
Yeah, so that's my no homework on Sundays. Or really anything of substance on Sundays.
We definitely did not have that. That's a very religious thing, and we were not religious, so...
My mother is a lovely baker and a lovely cooker, and we definitely didn't eat out very much, which as a kid you're like, oh, I want to eat out. I want to eat that like crispy KFC chicken, you know? But honestly, my mom making most, if not almost every meal was great in hindsight. But when
Except for oatmeal.
Oh, except for oatmeal. And that's one of the things. We were only allowed to, I think I already said this, so I'll say it quickly, but we weren't able to have sugary cereals until the weekends. Weekends were saved for Cheerios, Corn Puffs, whatever. I didn't like cereal as a kid either because of the whole like soggy milk thing that I have. But my mom we used to have dessert every single night growing up. I'm like, how she ended up doing that while raising 6 kids, I'll never know. But at some point, my mom was like, this might not be the healthiest thing. And maybe she was also like,
I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. So desserts became only on the weekends thing. So we still got dessert, but just on the weekends. And then that also happened with chips. I think we were eating too many chips. My younger brother and I, the whole family loves chips, but my younger brother and I, we will just eat chips. We have no self-control. This is why I'll eat a whole bag of jalapeno Cheetos in one sitting. We were doing that after school. We'd like come home, eat a bowl of chips, and Mom's like, this might not be the healthiest, and also our chip budget's probably through the roof right now. So you can only have one bowl of chips each day of the weekend. The weekends were great. So just
Sundays, just sit around, eat chips, dessert.
So that's just kind of the food restrictions. Where we didn't eat out very much. Dessert, chips on the weekend, and sugary cereals, which I didn't even like when I was young. So
My dad especially, he's still a super health nut. So when I was growing up, I basically was not allowed to have any junk food. There was a time in elementary school, I remember I was really embarrassed of bringing Chinese food for lunch because of the smells and I was getting made fun of. So they let me pick my own lunch for a while. That was a bad choice. I just picked like the sugary ass Danishes and like the Lunchables once in a while, like not healthy foods, but they stopped that after a while. And also I like grew out of being embarrassed of my food. But aside from that, we never had chips or pop or dessert in our house ever. And I think that has led to me being very intolerant of a lot of sweet food.
Yeah.
Yeah, even like chips, they kind of like are too salty, and a lot of them are too crispy, and they cut up the roof of my mouth.
I think it's
like
mainly
salt.
the cutting up your mouth.
I do like chips. I like savory junk food but it kind of makes me feel sick. And then sweet desserts extra make me feel sick. I get like all these bumps in my mouth and in my throat, and like I start coughing up phlegm, and it doesn't make my stomach feel good. So I feel like growing up without a lot of those junk foods has been kind of like a blessing and a curse, because sometimes I kind of do want to just eat an entire cake. You know, that's how you're feeling sometimes. But I know if I take like 3 bites, I'm just going to start feeling all sorts of wrong everywhere.
Yeah.
So you just have to stop. So it's like, it's been good for my health, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I wish I could just binge eat some desserts.
Wendy's cheat days aren't really cheat days. They're like a whole brownie and not half of one. Too much.
Yum! And then I feel terrible after. So that's kind of where we're at with. Even now, when I go home, we never have any like processed foods in the house. If we want desserts or if we want special unhealthy foods, we have to make them. And that applies to even like sauces. We didn't have ketchup. We didn't have like hot sauces. My dad's even phasing out a lot of brands of like soy sauce and oils and like Chinese vinegars, because he is all about that health.
Yeah.
He goes to his doctor every time. He's like, doctor, tell me the truth. How am I doing? And the doctor's like, I don't know why you keep asking me this. Every single year I tell you you're healthy as a horse, and then you come back and you're like, I'm ready for the worst. He's a bit of a hypochondriac, which has led to him being like a super health nut his whole life. He's very healthy. We all are. I'm very healthy thanks to my dad. I didn't like a lot of it when I was growing up, but I also like don't think it detracted from my childhood. So it was fine. I think I would do around the same thing. Maybe like I would bake brownies once in a while because I love to bake. So there's going to be desserts in my household, but not very frequently because we can't eat all of them. Xiaomin's also is not a sweets person.
His family, well, I guess his mother is a doctor, right? So she's probably more up on the don't eat that.
But also, I feel like as a culture, Chinese people aren't into super sugary foods. Our desserts are very not sweet.
It's true.
Yeah, we
anything
very
you feed me, I'm like,
rarely,
this is a dessert?
It's just beans, Wendy. What are you talking about? Anyway, moving on. Really quickly, I think we talked about this a little bit in our body image and insecurity episode, but my parents, especially my mom, was all about covering up the body all the way through my childhood, and even now for her and for myself. And I think it's there was another YouTuber where I heard this phrase from, which is modest is hottest. And I think that really applies to how the situation was when I was growing up. Yeah, so no halter tops, no short skirts. There was definitely none of that like semi creeping into a crop top situation. Even if like there's a little bit of shoulder exposure, none of that. You got longer sleeves and longer shorts and dresses. No cleavage. No.
My grandma, she always says sometimes with like a low cut shirt, she's like, that's a lovely shirt. A little bit of lace would make that shirt perfect. That was one of the things I really... Just a little bit of lace, a little, maybe a tank top, a cami underneath. Just to, but you know what? Probably something similar. I mean, my mom bought my clothes until I got my first job at like 16. So obviously she has a lot of say over what I'm going to get anyway. So I didn't see it as like, oh, I'm being really restricted. I think I was just like, this is how I dress because I'm not paying for this. That kind of thing. And also, again, wasn't super secure as a child. So it's not like I wanted halter tops and I wanted like anything too revealing. So my mom didn't really have to deal with like, Kim, you better go change. No, the fingertip rule. Put your hands down to your side. Like, that was never a thing that she had to, like, worry about with really any of us, if I remember correctly. So, I'm sure she would have inflicted some kind of dress code had it really been a problem with anyone, so.
Yeah, I think my mom's very conservative ideals towards the way you dress also led me feeling pretty insecure. Like, I don't have, generally, a lot of body insecurities, but body exposure makes me feel insecure. Now that I'm very independent, I buy my own clothing. It's not like my mom has any say in like how short my skirts are or how low my V-necks are. But now it's like if I wear something out that's too short or too revealing, I feel very uncomfortable about myself. So the way I dress now is still probably more conservative than what maybe sometimes I would like to, just because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
And I'm like, it's summer, I want to be wearing these sundresses, but the sun, and I have to like, honestly, how diligent I have to be with applying sunscreen is ridiculous. One of my sisters would be like, Kim, stop. It's too much. Stop applying it like every hour. Just like, but no, my skin, and I don't want to peel and burn. Like, honestly, I dread burning. So I'm very diligent. And so I'm like, long sleeve. I don't care if I'm sweating. I just don't have to put that extra bit of sunscreen on and deal with that. So.
And for me, I'm like, ooh, throw on a cardigan because I don't want people to see me in just spaghetti straps. That's blasphemy. Yeah. So very different reactions. But I think that concludes our episode for today.
I think it does.
We got really into it. This took way longer than
we
I thought.
We thought like 20 minutes in and out kind of deal, but no. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nudity. If you want to listen to this one along with other past episodes, you can find us at anywhere you listen to your podcast, as well as YouTube for a video version, and Instagram at Nudity Podcast. Thanks for listening. Bye. Bye.